And a lot of it comes from research. A lot of it comes from research. A lot of things that um, that some other interviewer is not going to ask them. Some other interviewer is not going to go back when you're interviewing an actor and ask about the second movie they were ever in. And to me, that's just kind of fun. I know when I interviewed Billy Crystal, when I was looking at some research on him, and I found out that he was a jazz DJ in college.
Welcome to the News Nirvana podcast. I'm your host, Nick Parker. The News Nirvana podcast features conversations with media professionals from across the country, highlighting our ever-evolving business models and showcasing the strong and effective journalism produced each and every day. This podcast is made possible to you by the generosity of Blocks Digital. Blocks Digital empowers content producers to connect with their worldwide audiences at scale and continuously transform to achieve their business goals. Contact Blocks Digital today to learn more about how they can help you thrive. Connect with them at blocksdigital.com. Hello and welcome back to the News Nirvana podcast. I'm your host, Nick Parker. I'm excited about our guest today, who's, childhood legend for me, and I'm sure for lots of people who grew up listening to the radio morning shows all around the country in the 80s and 90s. Randy Miller, 50-year veteran of the radio industry. He's been in Atlanta, San Diego, Pittsburgh, Charlotte, Cincinnati, and my hometown, Kansas City. Probably 2 or 3 stints here. Randy, welcome to the show.
News Nirvana. Oh, man.
Did I leave out any markets?
No, but I feel like now I finally made it. I mean, they say one day, if you play your cards right, you'll be on News Nirvana with Nick. And I'm like, no. But
yeah, I mean,
thank you, Nick.
This is the big time.
Yeah.
Look, I haven't had the chance to talk to a lot of radio people in the 2 or 3 years we've done the show, but it's a good way for us to reach out and talk to people in the media industry all around the country. Where we're at now, kind of how things are changing, what we're looking forward to. And Randy, I know you obviously from listening to the radio growing up here in Kansas City, but also I do a little work for you in some of your current projects. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for you to come on and talk about it. Really, I just want to know, well, really, I'm just going to ask you to tell a lot of stories, I guess, but we can start with, what's different now in the radio world than it was. Are we just all going to podcasts now?
I mean, I don't think there's anything the same now as it used to be in radio. So, it's just like everything else. Everything's evolving. Everybody's consuming their media in a different fashion, whether it's, Sirius FM or podcasting or streaming or anything like that. And which is exciting to me, to be honest with you, because it's there's so many different ways to get your message out there. But yeah, it's certainly different than, I talked to somebody the other day that was doing a morning radio show when I was. And, you just had, especially in the hometown that you were in or the city that you lived, you had just a finite number of choices. And which made it actually easier for somebody like me hosting a morning show to stand out, obviously. And once you kind of stuck around for a while, which I was finally able to do because I got fired a lot, as you know. But when I finally got back to Kansas City, was able to stay here and be on Q104 for about 13, 14 years. People do tend to realize that you're kind of the go-to guy, and so we always had #1 ratings. And to this day, since I still live in Kansas City, it's nice to hear from people that remember specific things. I just got an email from a guy through randymillerradio.com, and he said, I remember you calling people and pranking people. There was a phone booth. So the Country Club Plaza, just for the people that don't know, Country Club Plaza is like the mecca of shopping in Kansas City, or used to be. And that's where the radio station was. The first radio station I worked for here, 106.5 KCI. And there was a telephone booth. Remember those?
Yeah.
Remember those?
Thing of the past.
Yeah, there was a telephone booth. We were on the sixth floor, and then right below us on the sidewalk was a telephone booth. And so I thought, wouldn't that be cool if I just got that phone number for that telephone booth and randomly called it and recorded whoever would happen to be walking by and answer the phone. So that's what we did. We did it every single day. And, I was talking to my daughter about this. She said, well, I wouldn't answer the phone. I go, well, you don't know. It might be a day that you go, I'll answer the phone. And so people would routinely answer the phone, and I would just jack with them and record it and then play it on the air, obviously illegally since I didn't get their permission, but what do I care? And
Yeah, we screwed.
but it
That
was,
would be hard now because people avoid the phones, right? People don't want
yeah,
to talk on a phone.
right. And people, it was funny because this guy that emailed me in particular remembered one phone call where a guy was walking by the payphone, and he picks it up, and I said, Alcoholics Anonymous, and he goes, excuse me. I said, Alcoholics Anonymous, and he says, no, I ain't calling Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, why can't you pronounce it? And he goes, no. I said, are you drunk? And he goes, no, I'm not drunk. I can say Alcoholic Mama. I said, no, you're still not saying it. I said, listen, don't hurt yourself. Do not hurt yourself. He goes, I ain't gonna hurt myself. I said, you look like you're gonna hurt yourself. He goes, you can't see me. And I said, I can see everything you're doing. And of course, I'm looking right at him from the sixth floor. And and that was so much fun. Just so much fun for me. And that, I discovered that early on, that if it's fun for me, that it's likely going to be fun for somebody else that's listening. And that was kind of that was my philosophy in terms of anything I did on the air, and off the air, honestly, just talking to people. Like, if it's fun for me, that is might be fun for somebody else. But yeah, I mean, it's changed so much. It's changed so much. We used to, and obviously, since I've been in radio since I was 15, that was my first real radio paying radio gig in Knoxville, Tennessee. But the thing that I mean, there's some good and bad in all of the changes. The thing that kind of makes me sad is the fact that at my age, 15 through, let's say, 20, when I was working in radio, every single day, and you hang out with the same guys, and you end your shift, and that you stay at the station. You just stay there because you love it so much. And we used to have, there was a service that would record what they call air checks of most of the radio guys, morning guys around the country. And they would send those around. You could sign up as like a subscription thing, and you would get a cassette of 4 or 5 guys that you idolized, that I would idolize, and there were just a few of them. There was a guy named Grease Man that was in Florida. There was a guy, Jonathan Brandmeier, in Chicago. There was O'Brien and Gary in Pittsburgh. Just a handful of guys that I really thought was doing some really great work. And you would get those tapes, and you and about 5 or 6 other DJs would sit around the station and just listen to those tapes. And I don't know, that was just such a magical time for me. I mean, obviously I was just, new in the business, but just to kind of have that camaraderie and that passion and love for something that you could share with other people, that was a cool thing. And as you get older and you get a little jaded, I mean,
Happen?
it's not, yeah, it's not as fun then you just want to do your 4 and hit the door, you're out of there. But
Well,
that was just it was such a nice memory to think about those early days of radio. And of course, uh, nowadays, a lot of times people don't even show up to the station to do their shift. They've got voice tracking now, and they're here. This is a challenge for you. Call a radio station, any radio station. Just call it. Just find their number and call them. See if anybody answers. They won't.
Right.
And
Right.
and
Well,
that's
and I mean, technology, I mean, you do your shows from all over, from your
right.
house, from a studio, on the road.
Right. Which is why I love that part. But the part that I miss is that interaction, between listeners, and you don't you can't get that through a text. A lot of shows now will say, "Oh, we got to," they'll throw out a topic, and then they'll
Text
say,
time.
"Oh, we got a text over here that, oh, this is great. Jim in Grandview says, and it's just not the same. It's just not, it's not that back and forth kind of conversation."
Well, and that's kind of what I want to ask you about a little bit, and what you do now, the National Defense Network, which is a radio show that goes through Armed Forces Network, and your Celebrity Salute podcast, and I want to talk specifically about those here in a little bit. But you mentioned the games and the pranks and the things that you do,
Yeah.
and anybody who was in those markets and heard you, they were all hilarious. Um,
And hilarious
that
for
was
me.
audience building then.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and hilarious
How
for
does
me.
that translate to now? How does what you did then to build your audience, to build your following, does any of that translate to how you do a show now and build up that audience?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's so many different ways to build an audience now, and now I do it mainly through interviews versus just a back and forth conversation with listeners. And I mean, I'm fulfilled by that, I'm getting to interview people that I would never got to interview on a morning show, and so that's kind of
Right.
cool. Your big name celebrities that come through, and that's fun for me. That's a good time, but it's a different approach. It's just such a different approach. And now with streaming, and I know, and Nick, you've been very instrumental in terms of creating these reels that especially on Instagram with some of these celebrities. With Charlie Sheen, you just told me what, over 100,000 views
Over
for one of his
100,000 on one clip from
on one
Instagram
clip.
in the last 2 weeks.
So I mean,
Yeah.
that's some audience building right there, you know. And it's kind of cool. It's really kind of cool for me just to sit back and watch that happen. Like, okay, I did my job. I interviewed the guy, and then let's just kind of see where this goes, because I've always had that kind of psychology and mentality in my own life. For example, I loved uh, competing for a job for a morning show. And if somebody
Yeah.
would say, come in and interview for this job, um, I knew I was going to get the job. I mean, first of all, if they fly you into Atlanta, Georgia, radio
Right.
stations are
Right.
so cheap. If they're going to spend a dime, you got the job. But and I would work really really hard. I 99% of the time I didn't have an agent, so I just represented myself, and I love negotiating. Man, I loved it. And so I would negotiate for the job, get the job, and then just be like almost morose about having to take the job and work every day. I mean, that probably says a lot about me, but I mean, the
Well,
part,
you're not a therapy show.
yeah, well, it kind of, but you know, I loved getting the job. I just didn't want to do the work, and then once I started doing the work, I loved it, of course, but and most of that
Do you
was
feel like
based on the audience.
do you feel like a little like a switch flipped when you hit the desk and you turned on that mic?
Oh
Did
yeah,
you
oh
did you have to
absolutely.
do anything to get into, not character, but was there something that just kind of clicked you over?
You know, especially when you're starting a show at 6 a.m. Most of my stuff, and this is the other part that I really loved about morning radio. I would have the show would be done by the time I hit the air. So my philosophy has always been have a beginning and have an end and make up the middle. And that's exactly what I did, because during a live morning show, you don't have any idea what's going to, what's going to take place. I mean, you might have something here that you're thinking about doing, and then something over here happens, and you've got to react to that. And that was the challenge of it for me, is to take all of these different aspects of the show, whether it's contests or interviews or bits or things that we acted out on the air, and then wrap it all up in a bow at the end. And that was always fun for me. That was always a great joy. But the I didn't really have anything to kind of kickstart me. I was so, and a lot of people, I think one of the best compliments you can get in any performance kind of deal is, wow, you made that sound so easy. How did did that just come to you? Did that just, and sometimes it would, but I was very prepared. I was very prepared, and that's not everybody's style. Some people would roll onto the air and just kind of, hey, how you doing? What's going on? That wasn't me. I had someplace to get to. I had to get to this spot. I had to get to that phone call. I had to, and that just always kind of served me well, because I was ready to go. I mean, at 6 a.m. I was ready to go.
Yeah, that's
Some
interesting
days
to
I'd
me
be
when
late.
I first when I first got into podcasting, almost 10 years ago now. I'd spent my whole career in print, on the print side of things. So learning to do voice was a different kind of interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to a podcast called The Turnaround with Jesse Thorne. Excuse me, with Jesse Thorne. And what he did was interview sorry, that's weird. What he did is tell me never to cough into the microphone.
Yeah.
He interviewed interviewers and about their approach to it. Larry King,
Oh wow.
Ira Glass, all these. I don't know if you ever heard
I'd
that
like to
that
hear that,
podcast that he did,
actually.
but it's called The Turnaround with Jesse Thorne. But I got to listen to all these great interviewers talk about their approach and how they did it. And one of the things like that was Larry King saying he didn't want to read people's book. Like if you'd written a book, he wasn't reading it. He didn't want to know too much. He still
Right.
wanted to be surprised. He didn't want to
Right.
be over prepared.
Right.
And then there's people like Jon Stewart, who will read everything you've ever written in your entire life before you show up at his desk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so finding that balance, I think, was big for me to be prepared yet leave some room to be surprised, and for
Yeah,
interview to go in
I
a
think
direction.
I think there's a lot to be said for that, and that's kind of what I was talking about. And some days, depending on what was happening on that morning show, something could happen, and I would use none of what I had prepared. And those are actually kind of the best days, because you knew that there was so much going on that was compelling and that you could talk about, that you didn't need your prepared stuff. And but then you still had your prepared stuff. So that was always kind of
If you needed it.
cool. Yeah, that's right. Got something in the can.
Well, I want to get to what you're doing now, because I love the show that you're doing. I mean, obviously, I'm employed by it, so I like it.
Yeah, you contracted to love it.
Yeah, it's in my contract. It says I have to love it. But I think it's it feels like such a big change from the semi-controlled chaos that was your life as a morning show DJ to now what you do is you talk about supporting America's veterans and active duty military by interviewing celebrities and business leaders, corporate leaders, to talk about these topics and what are they doing and what can others do. And it's such a different thing from what I grew
Yeah.
up listening to you
Yeah.
to. How did that change come about?
Well, radio at the time was going through a huge turnaround as to where it is right now. And I could kind of see the writing on the wall there. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to have to depend on radio station owners to employ me for the rest of my life, this is not going to happen. I got to take some control here. I was making a great living and doing fine and moving around the country. And that was the other part is like, how do I stay in Kansas City now? Because every time I would, get fired or leave a job, you generally had to leave the market. And there are some, I know a lot of guys that work for a radio station and stay there for all their careers. Nothing wrong with that. I just wasn't that guy. And so when when I decided to do the show I did, you get fired a lot. So when I got to that point in my life to say, okay, I want to stay in Kansas City. I've been here now. I've been back here 3 times, and I love Kansas City. I love the people here. We had a lot of friends here. We had 2 girls that we were raising, and I thought, how do I do that? So just kind of thinking about it, I started developing weekend radio shows for different companies. And then I started the national headquarters of the VFW is in Kansas City. And I went there and I said, hey, you guys need to do a nationally syndicated radio show. And I talked to the communications director, Jerry Newberry. And he said, why do you think so? And I said, because everybody thinks you're a bunch of drunks that play bingo. And I said, I've seen your website. I said, so I know you're doing great work. So they bought it and they said, okay, why don't we start that? So we did it for the VFW for the first couple of years. And then Jerry retired and I expanded it and thought, if we could add some celebrities to this thing, this could almost be like a USO of the radio. And it has become that. And not only that, Nick, I got to tell you, I knew nothing about veterans when I started the show. It's like most of the stuff I've done in my life. you just do it.
That is a true media person approach, right?
Oh,
I
it
don't
is.
know anything about this.
Listen, I led the media training for incoming officers of the VFW. Do you know how many times before I had done that? Zero. Zero. And when they came to
I
me
have
and
no
asked me,
problem with that.
oh, no. When they came to me and asked me about that and said, could you do media training? I go, yeah, of course. Of course. And my rationale was I've actually done that all my life because I trained many, many people that worked for me to go out and do their own show. So I thought, well, I'll be able to do that. And I did it for like 5 years for the VFW and they seemed happy with it. But so but I didn't know any veterans at the time, and I didn't know much about the veteran community or the military community. So it is, man, honestly, when I tell you, it's been my honor and my pleasure for the past 12, 13 years to be doing this show. So I got to interview this morning, a Purple Heart recipient. And
Wow.
not only is that humbling, but who gets to do that? I mean, that's
Right.
just to me, those kind of things are. It's kind of like when I was doing a morning show and I'd be done. The greatest thing about this kind of show at the National Defense or the Celebrity Salute, the podcast, when you do a 4 hour morning show, when you're done, you're done. That's it.
Right.
It's done for the day. And this is before social media. They don't replay it. They don't, you got to start all over again the next morning and do another 4 hour show of all original material. And that's
Right.
it's hard. I mean, you get into a routine like you do with anything else, but it's hard. And so now, like the interview with the Purple Heart recipient, that's going to be there for a long time for people to listen to and that I can send it to and that can also get to share that with other people. And that's the beauty of really kind of back to your original question of how things have changed, but that's kind of the cool thing now is that you don't have to you don't have to recreate it every single day. You've got that. I mean, our library of interviews, I mean, it's massive. It's massive. I want to say over, 12, 13 years, somebody did the math, 10,000, 15,000 interviews, something like that. And
Yeah,
they're
I mean,
not.
I've been with you for what, 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
now, and it's anywhere from 3 to 7 guests every week.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they're not, they're not all stellar, but but a lot of them are, um, good to go back to, and we really don't have a lot of best of shows because I try to avoid that as a syndicated show because I don't like that myself, but no, that's cool. It's cool that you can create these moments that will live on.
The News Nirvana podcast is made possible by the generosity of Blocks Digital. Blocks Digital empowers content producers to connect with their worldwide audiences at scale and continuously transform to achieve their business goals. Contact Blocks Digital today to learn more about how they can help you thrive. Connect with them at blocksdigital.com. And I like that it's like I think you were alluding to this, that they're there for forever.
Yeah.
I couldn't go back and find, hey, I heard the morning show on Tuesday of last week. I want to go listen to it again.
Right. Right.
We can do that.
Yeah.
But now you can. You can go
Yeah.
back into
Sure.
a podcast or wherever
Yeah.
and re-listen to what was a great
The,
interview.
the thing that I used to get all the time doing a morning show, people would always say that I made them late for an appointment, or they were late for work, or they were something. They said, I just wish there was a feature that if I have to leave the car, that I could tape your show. And I don't think that's still available, kind of thing. They talked about doing that for a while. They had some kind of device that they were using that could possibly
Yeah.
do that, but no, that's the kind of stuff I would get all the time about people blaming me for them, being late, and I'm sure they blame me to their boss or whatever. But that was pretty cool.
One of the things that I think you are particularly good at in interviews, and this is a question I think for other people doing interviews, talking to celebrities, to actors, to professional talkers is not easy. I think I think professional talkers are the hardest interviews because they usually come in knowing what they're going to say. They've practiced it. They've done it 1,000 times. One of the things I think you are good at is not always getting that. Of still being able to get a little something else out of them. How do you go about doing that?
Well, and that's the secret sauce, right? I mean, that's if you get that one thing that they say to you that they've said to nobody else, it's like, oh boy. Or if you get somebody that
Yeah,
go,
you want
or yeah, or if somebody goes, wow, that's a good question. I mean, because they've been asked 1,000 questions, right? Maybe
right.
that week. And so for them to say something that they have to think about for a second, that's kind of cool. That's my big payday when that happens. But and a lot of it comes from research. A lot of it comes from research. A lot of things that that some other interviewer is not going to ask them. Some other interviewer is not going to go back when you're interviewing an actor and ask about the second movie they were ever in. And to me, that's just kind of fun. I know when I interviewed Billy Crystal, when I was looking at some research on him, and I found out that he was a jazz DJ in college. And I thought, well, nobody's,
Whoa.
yeah, yeah. And I said, Billy Crystal, you know him mainly as Uncle Eddie on the jazz show, the Three Beats from whatever, and he just started laughing. I mean, you got him. You got him, and that sets the tone for me. That sets the tone for the interview and for them. How boring it must be and a lot of this, I will say, and I was just telling somebody this the other day. So when I was doing country radio and we would go to the Academy of Country Music Awards every year, you'd sit there and it's called Radio Row, and you've got
Right.
maybe 20 other station DJs right down the row. And so they bring these country music artists in and they parade them, you might get 5 minutes with each one, and they're all asking the same questions. I mean, they're because most of them, like you talked about, have a project that they want to, usually a brand new album,
Right.
and so they've got some project that they know all the talking notes, they all the talking points. They've got exactly what the record label has told them to say. Uh, they know how to the heartstrings. They've got the whole deal down. So I was determined, because I didn't come from that world of country music radio. I was determined that I was not going to do those interviews. And that's really, that has set me up for the rest of my life, because I can remember one in particular, Hal Ketchum. So Hal Ketchum was a country guy that has had a new song called Mama Knows the Highway. And so Hal sits down, and he's already had, 3, 4, 5 interviews or something. You can tell he's just bored out of his mind. And he sits down, and the rest of the people have said, "What do you do? Is it the tune first? Is it the lyrics? How do you?" And so he sits down, and I go, "So Mama Knows the Highway," and he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, that's not a great thing to say about Mama, is it?" And he's immediately pissed off, immediately. And he looks at me, and
Oh no.
he goes, "I didn't write it." And I said, "So you just sing whatever somebody hands you? Somebody makes something up, just hands to you, you start singing it?" And he goes, "You're a real smart ass." And I said, "Yeah, I own that." And he said, and he just stood up, took his headphones off, and left the interview.
Wow.
And I had a great story for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I just that's one of those where you're like, for about probably what 5 seconds, you felt a little bad.
I don't know. I felt a little good.
Yeah, I bet. Do you have that same approach now? I mean, like we talked about it. You just had Charlie Sheen on the
Yeah.
show, on the Celebrity Salute podcast and National Defense Radio show. He's doing every talk show, every podcast imaginable right now
Right.
because of the documentary and the book.
He's trying to do as many talk shows now as he did drugs.
I don't know if he can catch up.
I not a chance.
But I mean, is that your same approach today?
It is. I mean, you just have to have in your mind what other people are asking, because you know what they're asking. And especially now, Charlie's a different deal, because he's in a different space, promoting his documentary and a book, and his book. But I've had him on enough to know that I can just talk about anything with him, and that's pretty much true of any guest that you have, or that I have, because we're all people. And I think sometimes we forget that, especially about celebrities or corporate CEOs or anything about that. I had a guy the other day, I was interviewing this guy that's the head of a multi-billion-dollar defense company. And I mean, the guy's extremely successful. And he was asking me about my background. And I told him, I said, I was a crazy morning shock jock and got fired a lot. And he goes, oh, wow. He goes, man, this is the first time I've met like a Johnny Fever guy. And and you could tell he was really kind of wrapped up in that. And so, I think, first of all, I think if you're doing an interview with anybody, you have to, unless they're just doing interviews all the time, you have to do something to put them at ease. That's number one, because you have to assume they're going to be nervous, and that could be anybody. That could be, that could be somebody like this CEO, and so you gotta assume they're going to be nervous, and then you got to just kind of make them feel very at ease. That's the other thing, that if I any compliment that I ever get after an interview, if somebody who's not used to being interviewed says, "Wow, you made that so easy," then I've done my job.
Yes.
That's a
Yeah.
great,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. I want to flip it back around a little bit to audience, and I'm going to ask you a question to see what your guess is here. Of the 3 or 4 years we've done the Celebrity Salute podcast, what do you think are the top 3 guests that you've had that people, numbers wise, our audience that we've reached? Can you name what those 3 would be?
You mean, I see what you mean. Just strictly by the numbers, not my favorite.
Popularity. Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah,
know.
not your favorite, but what do you think people have gravitated to? Because I always think it's crazy to see what people latch on to.
I do too. I enjoy that. And that should tell us a lot, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
What do you think the top 3 guests have been?
Leanne Morgan, I know, was one.
Yep.
Comedian Leanne Morgan, who I love, lives in my hometown in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a Knoxville love affair there.
we sang Rocky Top together, which is great. So Leanne Morgan's number one. Charlie Sheen, I know, is up there, right? Wow. Those are the top 2, right?
The third one you're not going to get because it's not a celebrity.
Oh,
it was the executive from and oh, dang it! Now I'm gonna go blank on the. It was the gun manufacturer.
Oh, the Smith and Wesson guy.
Not Smith and Wesson. Now I'm horrible. I didn't do my research well enough. I didn't write my note down.
I know who you're talking about.
He tells the story about how the handgun company sold for $1 from the German company.
That's right. Oh, that's right.
That is, like, I think, the third most listened to interview. That clip isn't
that funny?
It's crazy. And the funny thing about Leanne Morgan being the most popular, not Leanne Morgan that you did a couple months ago as the Netflix show took off.
Right.
But Leanne Morgan from a year and a half ago when she was just getting known.
Yeah.
That's
my favorite. Those are the best. So every time, and a lot of people don't know how that works, but so you line up a celebrity, you go through their publicist 99% of the time, and they ask you in advance. They say, "Can you send us the questions in advance?" And not all of them do that, but most of them do. And my answer is always no. And they're like, "Well, we got to get them ready to talk to you." And I go, "Well, I mean, they've been in show business for 40 years. I'm sure they're ready now." And but my position is always the same, because I don't want it to be a stilted conversation. I don't want for me to ask that, and for them to say that, and they know the question and I know the answer, and that's no fun for anybody. And they would tell you that. They would, I've had celebrities come on that say, "Hey, thank you for not furnishing the questions." And I go, I didn't know what they were. You got to.
I try to know time.
You got to find out what they are first. The publicist will suggest things, and if it's about a specific project, great. I mean, tell me anything you want to about that, and we'll try to bring that up. But most of the time, once you get into a conversation and the person being interviewed can recognize that you have done a little bit of your research, that you're interested in hearing what they have to say about different things, not just their projects, then they kind of get a little sense of, okay, all right, I'm gonna stay with this guy for a while.
Right. I like that. And I just am always amazed that you never know which ones are going to catch on.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And I love the Leanne Morgan one, because I think within a week or two of that interview, you also had Morgan Freeman, the voice of God.
Yes.
And I don't think he had half her numbers.
I'd like to do Leanne Morgan Freeman. I'd like for Leanne Morgan to come on with a deep, very deep black voice. "Hello, Randy," and just do some comedy.
I think she'd do it.
I think she would too.
I
No.
wanted to do Rocky Top in that voice.
Oh my gosh, that would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. She's just, some of these people you can tell, and I always love when people hear an interview and they go, that guy seemed like a nice guy, or that she seems down to earth, and because that makes me feel like I've kind of done my job too. I brought that part out of
Mm-hmm.
them or showcased that in some way. I got to tell you, one of my favorite interviews ever, just because I enjoyed it so much, was an actor named Jake Johnson. And I don't know if you ever heard that,
Yes.
Nick. Okay. Um,
Yeah, he did. He did really well.
oh, to me, and he's not known by everybody. He was on, what was that show? That Girl
New
or
girl,
New Girl or something like
girl.
that. And so he was on that, and then he did a series on Netflix called Minx, which was great. And he's a Midwest guy, and we just hit it off in terms of me living in Kansas City. He lived in Chicago, and just that kind of sensibility. He's got a great sense of humor. Um, those are my most fun ones to do. And the other ones I love. If we've got sometimes we have a time limit. Sometimes we'll get somebody for 10 minutes, and if that 10 minutes is with a stand-up comedian, man, I love it. I love it because they're just ready to talk about anything because that's what they do, you know? I mean,
They just want to rip.
yeah. And sometimes Adam Carolla is one of my favorite guests because Adam will come on with a project and we will never get to it. And, or I'll say, do you ever do that thing where you try to pick up a piece of avocado with your fingers? It's impossible. And he'll just go. Yeah, I mean that I love that stuff. That's good.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, is there? I want to get back to National Defense and Celebrity Salute and what you're doing there and why you think it's important for people to tune in on these things. I'm gonna old word tune in. Um,
Yeah.
why it's important to get these stories out there and those connections.
I'll go back to that interview I did today with the Purple Heart recipient. They're going to establish a mobile Purple Heart traveling exhibit,
Oh wow.
and I love that idea because not a lot of that is taught in schools anymore. And so for them to bring something like that to your town and for your family members and kids and everybody else to get to see that have no idea what a Purple Heart recipient is or what it means to be one, then that's fantastic. That's just fantastic to me because that kind of stuff goes away. We just how many World War II vets do we still have around? I mean, those kind of stories and those kind of things that you can learn about from them. And as National Defense Network, we're one of the very, very few places that they can tell those stories. I mean, I get press. I bet I get 40 press releases a day just from different things going on in the military and veteran community. And most of the time, when they send those to the TV news stations or radio. Nobody's at the radio station to receive them, but,
Right.
um, but most of the time they go in the trash because that's boring. I mean, to a lot of people, it's why talk about that? We got I don't know here who Selena Gomez is dating, and so so I'm happy to do that. I'm really happy to do that, and then the fact that we got the National Defense Network, and then with our podcast Celebrity Salute, we basically take the biggest interview of the week, and that's where that will land. And now we've got nationaldefensenetwork.org, which is our fundraising element because everybody asks us all the time, who do we support in the veteran community? What organizations? And we work with 24 of the best ones on national defense, and we've got our favorites, and I always point people toward either Team Rubicon or the Gary Sinise Foundation or Fisher House. And then we had a company that developed an app for us that is the largest giving savings platform on the planet. So you download the app at nationaldefensenetwork.org. You can support any military organization you want. You say you want to send them $25. Well, then on top of that, you get $1,500 in savings. So like the old entertainment books, whether it's Walt Disney World or a car wash, an oil change. I mean, it's a really cool idea because you're giving at the same time you're saving, and so it really is kind of a win-win. But so I'm excited about all of that, and then on top of all of that, we are launching in November a 10-city tour. We're calling it the Back the Bases 10-city tour, and we're going to broadcast from a different military base every month for 10 months, beginning with
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be fancy. I'm so excited about it. It's going to be starting with Fort Leavenworth in Leavenworth, Kansas on November 7th. And then we go to Fort Leonard Wood. We're going to go to Whiteman. We're going to go to Camp Pendleton in San Diego on January 30th. I mean, the fact that I have to get out of Kansas City and go to San Diego on January 30th kind of bums me out.
Oh, darn it.
Yeah. But
I'm sure that I'll be called upon to carry some cameras.
Absolutely. I mean, make your travel plans now. Well, and well, the cool thing about it is, so at one of those bases, Gary Sinise and his Lieutenant Dan band's going to play. At one of those, Robert Irvine, celebrity chef Robert Irvine, is going to come out and cook for the troops. The Camp Pendleton on January 30th, Charlie Sheen is going to join us. So, I mean, we have a lot of those kind of things going on, and I'm just excited to kind of get that interaction again. That's going to be fun for me. That's going to be great.
That'll be a lot of fun. I'm glad you brought up that Chef Irvine is going to join you, because I was going to tell you that since I've been involved, that is one of my favorite episodes.
Me too.
Because not only was he a great guest with good content, but then at the very end, we brought in 4 or 5 different veterans
that all wanted
to be
career. Chef. Yeah, right.
And he latched onto one of them.
Yeah,
who wanted to start a food truck.
Right.
And just gave so much advice, almost like said, "I'm going to become your mentor, and we're going to figure this out."
Yeah, right.
It was a great episode.
Yeah, I think we called it a Veterans Roundtable or something like that, and the Wounded Warrior Project rounded up those folks. And yeah, you're right. I love that. That was so, to make that like connection right there. That was so cool. And I mean, I want to do more of that. I want to do more of that because that's some immediate feedback, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it just to be, it's just one of those things just to watch that unfold, that connection made between a veteran, that's given so much in service. Right. And here's a guy that says, you know what, we're going to get you to the next step.
And Robert Irvine is a veteran.
Is a veteran himself. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was cool. That was cool.
Well, Randy, I appreciate you coming on. The National Defense Radio Show goes out every week. Armed Forces Radio, Celebrity Salute Podcast, anywhere you get podcasts. Randy, thanks so much.
Thanks, Nick. This has been fun. Always great talking to you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That'll wrap us up for this episode. We'll talk to everybody next time. The News Nirvana podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or most any of your favorite podcast apps. The News Nirvana podcast is made possible by the generosity of Blocks Digital. Connect with them at blocksdigital.com. The News Nirvana podcast is produced by Fredcasts. Think, speak, act,